It's time to glaze Dave the aardvark. I made Dave last week, and there's a video up on my YouTube in case you want to see how Dave came into being. To glaze Dave, I'm going to need a range of different sizes of brush. A small brush is particularly good for this one. Some glazes, and to start with I'm going to be glazing the ants on his t-shirt. In my previous video I drew a whole parade of ants along the bottom of his t-shirt, and it's these ants that we're going to be glazing today in different colours. I'll start with a black underglaze and outline my design using the lines I made before and fill in any solid areas on the ant's body. I made Dave the aardvark in an earthenware clay from the company Hot Clays. I'll put a link in the description below. I'm going to fire him to cone 05, which is about 1040 degrees Celsius. A cone is a measure of temperature in the kiln. This is pretty hot, but in pottery terms that's quite a low temperature. The first firing is called a bisque firing. The second firing is a glaze firing. I fire both my bisque and my glaze to the same temperature. Some potters fire their bisque to a higher temperature than their glaze, or vice versa. It just depends on the type of clay and glaze you are using. I like to paint some of my glaze before the bisque firing because it will save me from doing a third firing later on, and I find it easier to clean away any mistakes. But of course, if anything happens to Dave in that first firing, all this painting I'm doing now will be lost, but we'll not dwell on that for now. I've nearly finished glazing the ants now. What I love about these is they're all so different. They tell a real story and add character to the piece. If there are any areas where the underglaze has gone over the lines, I can gently remove that just using clean water and the tip of my finger. You can see where I add the water, the clay goes a darker colour, but very quickly dries and goes back to grey. Now I can start to add some colour, some festival colours to the flags and the hats. I've picked 4 glazes, a yellow, a green, a blue and a red. We'll start with the red, and for the purposes of this video, we'll watch it at 4 times the speed. Now a dark blue colour, a green. Small details make all the difference. The ants are all painted now, and we're ready to move on. I'm going to paint a couple of blue lines across the top of his t-shirt. T-shirt is finished. Now it's time to look at that hat. I've added some dark brown highlights to the lines and a straw coloured yellow glaze for the main colour of the hat. It's time to glaze the eyes and bring this aardvark to life. We need some pink in his ears and on the end of his nose. Lastly, we need to completely cover his t-shirt in a transparent brush-on glaze. This will show through the colours we have painted underneath and fire to give us a lovely, glossy, shiny finish. That's the t-shirt completely covered now. Always good to check that you haven't missed any bits. I need to add that same transparent glaze to the eyes. I've now finished painting Aardvark Dave. As glaze is a liquid, the clay body will have absorbed some of that water, so I'll leave Dave to dry on a radiator for an hour or so. Clay needs to be as dry as possible when it goes in the kiln, or it can cause cracks, which would be really sad. So glazing on greenware has the advantages of only needing 2 firings, which saves energy and money, and also I find is easier with the cleanup. But the disadvantage is there is a lot of work and time invested in a piece that may not make it through the firing in one piece. But for that we shall have to wait until tomorrow. Here was my first look at Dave after he'd been fired in my kiln. I was too nervous to film taking him out of the kiln, but I can reveal that Dave made it through the firing. He looks great. All the ants came out just as I wanted them to, with their bright flags and their funny hats. I'm really pleased with the hat too. Well done, Dave. As Dave is a hairy aardvark, I'm going to highlight all the marks I made in the original build before I dip him completely in a honey-coloured glaze. Before I'm ready to glaze him for the last time, I'm putting sellotape on the base to protect it from the glaze, as I'll be dipping him head first and then from the bottom up. This is my honey-coloured glaze bucket. Because I don't have quite enough glaze to dip him in one go, I have to dip him from the top and then from the bottom up. I'll leave him for the glaze to dry for a while before I can get to the cleanup. Where glaze is on the shiny areas from the first firing, I'm using a stiff brush to just clean away any of the honey glaze. The dust that is created is basically a mineral dust that can get airborne, and I don't want to breathe that in. So in general, I want to work as clean as possible with glaze to avoid any glaze dust. Working over the glaze bucket helps to catch the falling dust and makes cleaning up after easier. I'll touch up any areas that aren't glazed and rub away any air bubbles or unevenness in the glaze with my finger. Dave is now ready to go in the kiln again. With nothing else left to do, it's time to get the kiln on. A firing takes just over 7 hours. Here's a look inside the kiln at just over 700 degrees C. I won't be able to open it until tomorrow, but I can't wait to see what he looks like. And here he is, Dave, my funny, hairy aardvark, and his ant parade. I am so pleased with how he came out. With ceramics, there is so much that can go wrong at any stage. It's wonderful to see a creation come out just as you hoped and imagined. He was a pleasure to make, although not without some nervous moments, and he'll go in my next shop update. But for now he can stay on this shelf and keep me company. And I'll get ready for my next clay creation. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!